No, Republicans returned to Washington this week, doubling down on their defense of former President Donald Trump after his conviction on 34 counts related to falsifying business records. House Speaker Mike Johnson broadly outlined a three-pronged approach Tuesday during a weekly conference meeting on how the Republican majority can target the Justice Department, New York, and other jurisdictions for investigating Donald Trump, vowing to use House oversight powers while cutting funds in the government appropriations process and taking over unspecified legislative measures. And Representative Andy Kim won the Democratic primary for Senate in New Jersey yesterday. The seat is held by embattled Senator Bob Menendez, who on Monday filed to run for re-election, that is, as an independent amid his trial on federal corruption charges. Menendez's son, Representative Rob Menendez, also a Democrat from New Jersey, was the projected winner, and he survived a primary challenge in the race yesterday. His race had been overshadowed by the legal issues embroiling his father. And Attorney General Merrick Garland appears to be losing patience with the thinly constructed Republican conspiracy theories about the supposed weaponization of the justice system against the GOP. Merrick Garland 2 weeks ago delivered what was his standards, a quick and strong rebuke of a ridiculous Donald Trump push theory that the FBI had targeted Trump in an effort to shoot and kill him. And Representative Byron Donalds, Florida Republican, is in a lot of hot water today. According to Trump, he is considered to be a potential running mate. But on Tuesday, Donalds said that the Jim Crow era had some virtues for Black people. Now, he said this while trying to persuade Black voters of what he believes to be their best shot in this election, which is supporting Donald Trump. Now, you will recall the Jim Crow era, which lasted from the end of the Civil War until the 1950s, was an era when Black people in the United States were subjected to segregation and were brutalized by racist authorities. But somehow, Byron Donalds thinks that's an era where Black people flourish. And Republicans have gone after Hunter Biden for years, but his trial on gun charges undermines their views on gun rights and a weaponized Justice Department. This stands to reason that the baseless claim that the Biden Justice Department is running a political prosecution against Trump is undermined by the department's prosecution of the president's son. It's also hard to make much of allegations that Hunter Biden lied about his drug use to purchase a handgun when Republicans are sponsoring legislation to ease gun purchasing restrictions for veterans struggling with mental illness, and even a case that's before the Supreme Court that would allow domestic abusers to buy firearms. And the Georgia Court of Appeals today stayed the criminal election interference case against Donald Trump. Now, they said this case will be stayed until an appellate panel could resolve the matter of whether District Attorney Fonnie Willis of Fulton County should be disqualified from prosecuting the case based on a conflict of interest. In a brief one-page order, the court stated that any movement at the trial court level pertaining to Trump and 8 of the defendants will remain stayed pending an outcome on the Willis's ability to continue her prosecution. This is a major blow to the prosecution's case and a major win for Trump, because this means that Georgia case will not be tried until at least after the November election. And there may be a slight uptick in those folks who say that Donald Trump being convicted of 34 felony counts, will sway their vote in November. In interviews with nearly 2,000 voters who previously took a New York Times poll, President Biden appeared to gain in the aftermath of Trump's conviction last week for falsifying business records. The group favored Trump by 3 points when originally interviewed in April and in May, but this week they backed him by only 1 point. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is Areva Martin in real time, I should say. And this is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I am joined by two expert Democratic strategists, Dr. Raphael Sonnenschein, who's the executive director of the John Randolph Haynes and Dora Haynes Foundation, and Ed Sanders is here this hour. He is a veteran and I should say very skilled political analyst. They are going to help us make sense of this very, very busy news day and all the things that are happening, particularly in Washington, D.C. And in hour two, you know what we do. That's the hour where we go deep, where we dig behind those headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, June is Pride Month. It's the month where members of the LGBTQ community raise awareness about what it means to be either gay or lesbian. Also, raise awareness about the continued discrimination, harassment, and just unequal treatment that individuals that are members of the gay community continue to face in the workplace, in jobs, and in the community. This hour, in hour two today, we're going to be talking to one of my contributors. She's been a big part of this show for a while. She was a professor at Amherst College. She's also an author of a book called This Is Major. Her name is Professor Shayla Lawson. Shayla Lawson has a very interesting story. She identifies as a queer Black woman. She says she's non-binary. She uses pronouns they and them. Well, Dr. Lawson was married recently. She married a man named Michael Hunter Lawson, who is a healthcare worker. He also identifies as a queer man, or a queer person, I should say, because they also identify as non-binary. This story about Shayla Lawson and Michael Hunter Lawson is going to be shocking for a lot of folks because their marriage is not a traditional marriage by any stretch of the imagination. Both will share the story of how an illness, a disability, and the lack of health care led them to wed. And they'll share how difficult it is for individuals who are non-binary and who also identify as members of the LGBTQ community to access basic rights and services in this country. So in honor of Pride Month and in an effort to raise awareness about the ongoing issues that many individuals in the LGBTQ community face, Dr. Shayla Lawson and Michael Hunter Lawson will join us in hour two. So make sure you stick around. But before I bring on my guest, here's what I'm thinking in real time. I don't know about all of you, but I suspect that you are like me. You are so sick and tired of Marjorie Taylor Greene and those Republicans like her that seem to do nothing in Congress but try to figure out how many ways they can be provocative, how many ways they can go viral, how many ways they can insult the intelligence of other members of Congress. And they do all of that at the expense of governing, at the expense of doing anything that's productive that can improve the lives of others. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene was in it with Jasmine Crockett. We know the Congresswoman from Texas. That was probably 2 weeks ago. That meme went viral. Well, just recently, Marjorie Taylor Greene is back at it again. This time, she is attacking Democrats, accusing us of worshiping George Floyd, a Black man, as you all know, who was killed 4 years ago at the hands of Minneapolis police. She went on to her social media platform, Twitter, now known as X, and said that George Floyd did not deserve to die, and as a member of Congress should have the decency to acknowledge his humanity. Well, you would think that this woman, she made this statement about George Floyd, but she went on to talk about Democrats and saying that we are worshiping him, and she calls him a convicted felon. And she goes on to rebuke Representative Jamie Raskin, a Democrat from Maryland, as well as other Democrats. And she just makes the most pejorative statements about George Floyd. Now, this is a woman who, by all accounts, is blindly worshiping convicted felon Donald Trump. Donald Trump is convicted on 34 felony counts. And not only is Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently worshiping him, but all of the Republican Party, at least most of them that are in Congress and in the Senate. And, you know, the fact that she would make this comment about George Floyd. The fact that she would accuse Democrats of worshiping him. And she went on to say that there were riots burning down the effing country over George Floyd. Just shows how petty this woman is and how unqualified, unhinged, unfit she is to be in Congress. Clearly, Democrats, we were not worshiping George Floyd. We had empathy for George Floyd as we would have for anyone who was killed before our very eyes by police for basically doing nothing. We weren't worshiping George Floyd as we used the murder of George Floyd to raise awareness about systemic racism and the many barriers that Blacks in this country continue to face, particularly at the hands of law enforcement. And it wasn't worshiping George Floyd to acknowledge how his death caused this country to, at least for a short period of time, do some soul searching about race and racism. So to make this false equivalency about George Floyd and what we see Republicans doing around Donald Trump just shows her complete and utter ignorance, and why, again, she should not be anywhere near the seat of government. And I can't even imagine the folks that continue to support her and vote for her, but she will have her day of reckoning as well. And we are going to keep calling her out and all of these other Republicans who are worshiping Donald Trump. And we will keep saying the name of George Floyd and other African-American men and women who are killed at the hands of police, because it is the way that we call attention to systemic racism in our criminal justice system. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Single Moms Planet is a nonprofit organization dedicated to uplifting under-resourced single mom business owners and working mothers nationwide. Single Moms Planet offers comprehensive programs of financial literacy, business development, mentorship, and entrepreneurial training. They provide education, accountability, and hope. Single Moms Planet was founded by model, TV personality, and producer Nefertari Plessy. Nefertari felt firsthand the challenges that face single moms as she was raised by a working single mother. She learned that the most disadvantaged group in the United States are single mom families. According to the U.S. Census, 30% live under the poverty line. So she decided to do something about it, along with co-founder Cole Patterson. Their goal is to end the poverty cycle in single mother households through education, opportunity, and networking, providing family and child enrichment programs for under-resourced single-parent families. Single Moms Planet serves over 10,000 single moms and their children each year. Studies show that business development and financial literacy provide a positive environment for children and families, exposing them to new possibilities and opportunities. To attend one of their fun events, make a donation, or get more information, or if you need help as a single mom, please visit singlemomsplanet.org. That's singlemomsplanet.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age. But there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Kind of like choosing Derek Jeter as the pinch hitter for your baseball team.
Jeter, you're in. We need a home run.
I'll give it a try. I've swung a bat once or twice.
That's out of here.
Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
Presenting Again Fling's love story. Dear love of my life, we were on the 12B bus this morning when I caught a whiff. A scent so fresh, so life-changing, I had to find its source. Alas, I didn't know if you were the woman in the pink freshly washed cardigan or the retired mailman next to me, but I knew one of you was my soulmate. Ah, the scent of Gain Flings. Try Gain Flings with
We are back, and in this hour, Ed Sanders and Raphael Sonnenschein are joining me, two veteran political strategists, to help us make sense of today's breaking and trending news. And in hour two today, we're going to be talking to a couple who were, in their opinion, or in their statements, I should say, forced to get married because of a disability and the need for health care. It's Pride Month, so both of these individuals identify as queer. So we're going to learn about the discrimination and challenges that many individuals in the LGBTQ community continue to face, despite some of the gains and progress that has been made for that community over the last several decades. But welcome back to the show, Ed. Welcome back, Rafe. I want to correct my own self, because as I was reading this statement about Marjorie Taylor Greene, I made a mistake and read the statement about having respect for George Floyd was not Marjorie Taylor Greene's statement. That was a statement that was written by the Congressional Black Caucus in response to Marjorie Taylor Greene, basically saying that Democrats were worshiping George Floyd. And she says there were riots burning down the effing country over him, and that he was a convicted felon. Rafe, I don't know how someone like her ends up in Congress. And the kind of conduct that she engages in, from personal attacks on Jasmine Crockett just a week or two ago to now attacks on George Floyd, she just seems to try to figure out more ways than not to get attention and to go viral and to just say the most provocative things around race, gender. I mean, it doesn't matter. Nothing's off limits for her. How is she in office? Help us understand that.
That's the place to start. She really doesn't have to worry about anything but her own party. Although I have to tell you, Reva, what's startling is how much people in the Republican Party in the House hate her. One of the few bipartisan areas of agreement in the House of Representatives is loathing for Marjorie Greene. And she's a party of one within a party that already likes performative stuff, where the more outrageous things you say. She made a mistake, I think, taking on an actual person in the room the other day with the Congress member that she took on, because she was expecting just to have a horrified look, and instead she got some stuff sent right back at her that she really didn't know how to deal with, which doesn't happen to her too often. But you should hear or read what Republicans say about her in the House. She's on her own there in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that exchange between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jasmine Crockett was epic, not only because of what Jasmine Crockett said in response, as you said, but I was just looking at Jamie Raskin's face. He was turning red as he was watching these two women, go at each other. And Jasmine Crockett was just returning this, comment that Marjorie Taylor Greene, a personal attack about her false eyelashes or something, just childish high school kind of performative, as you said, conduct. But she has been elected, as you said, by members of her party in her district. And she continues to, despite being hated by someone in her own party, she continues to speak in many ways for the Republican Party, because they have become a party at more performance. Like now, Mike Johnson saying that he's going to use every power that he has as the congressional leader to take revenge on, I don't know, the country, or I'm not sure who he's getting revenge on, but because of Donald Trump's 34 count conviction for falsifying business records, Republicans in the House and in the Senate feel like they've got to do something. Stephen Miller, I think it was on Fox and gave a playlist of things that they should do, from literally opening investigations on any Democrat that they can, making up investigations even when there aren't legitimate ones. But what do you make of Mike Johnson and others in the Republican Party saying they've got to do something to avenge the prosecution of Donald Trump?
Yeah, and it dovetails into your assessment of Marjorie Taylor Greene. When I look at Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and a few of the others in the Republican House, they're really motivated by this sort of social media clickbait content driven world, right? They find themselves saying that the most outlandish things because it gets clicks. They're able to raise money. It's not really rooted in any real morality other than stirring up the race culture wars in this country, right? You can already hear them gearing up if they haven't already to talk about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and the WNBA, and they pull whatever's going on in the news into this race culture war battle, and it really has nothing to do with policy. And I think that's the key part is when you look at the Republican Party, the policy platforms really aren't designed for working Americans, but they keep getting the clicks based on their ability to circle the wagons and make white Americans feel like they're being attacked or something's not right for white Americans. And, ultimately that the world is changing and white Americans are getting left behind. And that's their whole stick. And, however many million followers she has, however much money she's able to raise, she becomes effective in that space. It's hard for those of us that actually care about the country and have some measure of hope for the policy that could come out of Congress, because that's not what she and her team are doing.
Yeah, it's really difficult to keep up with their positions, Rafe, because now you have this Hunter Biden trial. And as I said, Hunter Biden's trial really undermines many of their talking points. One, this notion that the Justice Department is being weaponized just against Trump. Well, here's the president's son on trial for what arguably is the leanest and most flimsy case you can imagine. And then two, the gun issue. So here is a man who had some kind of drug problem, who checks the box, has a gun for 11 days. No one's injured with the gun. The gun isn't used in any kind of crime. And these are the same folks that want veterans with mental health issues to have access to guns, and even domestic violence offenders. So I know they can't be upset that somebody using drugs gets a gun. What's the big deal? But they're pretty quiet on this issue with Hunter Biden. I mean, they've been attacking them, but now they've got a dilemma, right? So how do they justify or reckon these very hypocritical positions that they've taken?
Oh, I don't think they have a dilemma at all. I mean, there's no search for consistency here. What they really got is the word Biden and a trial, so that when convicted felon sticks to Donald Trump, they can say Trump, Biden, convicted felons, and try to even it out. I don't think they're at all worried about the inconsistency on guns and whether or not it's the Biden allegedly, why didn't he stop the trial? That's like in the weeds of the world of consistency that I don't think is going to make much difference in their counsels. I think they think it's a great time. I mean, there's a Biden on trial.
Yeah.
As they used to say, what could be bad about that?
Facts be damned, right? Who cares about facts? Or like you say, consistency in arguments. When we come forward, got to talk about Representative Byron Donalds. All these Republicans who are auditioning to be on the ticket. Is there a snowball's chance in hell that Donald Trump is going to pick a black candidate, i.e. Byron Donalds or Tim Scott, to be his running mate? Talk about that and some of the other breaking news of the day when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Is the right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. A trial date has now been set for former Stratford County, New Hampshire Sheriff Mark Brave. Jury selection in his case is scheduled to begin on August 5th after he failed to reach a plea agreement with prosecutors. Brave is accused of stealing $19,000 in taxpayer money, falsifying evidence, and perjury. He made history back in 2020 by being elected to serve as New Hampshire's first African-American sheriff. A Black man from Maryland who served as a medic in World War II has posthumously been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions during the Allied invasion of Normandy. During the D-Day invasion, 21-year-old Waverly Woodson Jr. spent more than 30 hours treating fellow soldiers, saving an estimated 200 lives despite being wounded himself. Maryland U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen says Woodson earned a place among the most noble of American war heroes for his courageous display of valor on D-Day, but never received the full recognition that his actions merited, largely due to the color of his skin. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Over in Azusa, a crash has been reported in the middle lanes of the 210 west of Vernon Avenue, while stop traffic from Citrus Avenue is up to 20 minutes. In Cerritos, on the 91 east at Norwalk Boulevard, watch for a crash in the middle lane with a slight delay running heavy from the 605. Back in Long Beach, on the 405 south at Lakewood Boulevard, shoulder remains blocked with an accident and heavy traffic is coming from the 105 over 35 minutes. And over in Irvine, expect a 35 to 40 minute backup currently on the 5 north between San Canyon Avenue and the Disneyland Drive Ball Road interchange.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. At Blindster, we offer over 50 different custom window treatments, including faux wood blinds and shutters, all at prices less than retail. Plus, we'll send you free samples before you buy. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers still have not set a timetable for hiring a new head coach. Keep this date on your radar. June 23rd. If the NBA Finals between the Boston Celtics and Dallas Mavericks go 7 games, June 23rd is the date for Game 7. NBA sources claim J.J. Redick has emerged as the leading candidate to become the Lakers' next coach. The former Clippers guard is working for ABC as an NBA analyst. Redick will be calling the NBA Finals with Mike Green and Doris Burke. Game 1 is Thursday night in Boston. If Redick indeed is the Lakers' top choice, they will have to wait until after the finals to make it official. Redick has no previous coaching experience on any level. Pat Riley and Steve Kerr also had no coaching experience, but they turned out to be pretty good coaches after leaving the broadcast booth. Stay tuned on this situation. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, Tavis Smiley here. We're getting closer to June 18th, and time is running out for you to register to join us for our historic symposium live on C-SPAN, Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com right now if you want to be in the audience when the nation will see for the first time ever a stage full of brilliant Black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's all going down. Well, it's actually all going up. Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. live from the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Again, admission is free, but we're filling up fast. So if I were you, I would log on right now to KBLA1580.com to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. We're KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
If you're an adult in need of an accredited high school diploma, the Los Angeles Public Library can help. You could earn one for free in as few as 5 months, online with 24/7 access. You also get a personal academic coach, plus special training focused on 9 in-demand industries, as well as a resume and cover letter to advance your career. Visit the website at lapl.org/diploma. That's lapl.org/diploma.
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing.
We are back, and in this hour, Ed Sanders and Raphael Sonnenschein are joining me as we try to make sense of today's busy news as well. In hour two, we're going to be talking about Pride. It's Pride Month, the entire month of June. We're going to be talking to a couple, both who identify as queer, who said they had to get married, not because they don't like each other, and they love each other in a way, but they got married because of some of the discrimination and obstacles that queer people continue to face in this country. We're going to hear all about their story of illness, disability, and how they are making it work in order to save one of the partner's lives. So make sure you stick around for hour two. All right, Ed, Byron Donalds, Florida Republican, whom Trump has said is on his short list, and we don't know what that means really. But he made some outlandish comments about the Jim Crow era as having some virtues for Black people while trying to persuade voters of color to back Trump. It seems like folks in Florida really got their history wrong about slavery and the aftermath of slavery. You know, this is the state where educators said that there was some vocational benefit that enslaved people derived. And now Donalds, who's a congressman from the state of Florida, saying, oh, the Jim Crow era, Black folks were together, families were together, and that was a good era. What do you make of these just ridiculous statements by these Black folks in many cases who are trying to audition for Donald Trump and who are willing to say just about anything?
Right. I mean, you called it. I mean, and the CBC statement on it referenced it. I mean, he is a mouthpiece for buffoonery. And, you know, when you think about Jim Crow and particularly Florida, I mean, this is a representative elected to Congress from Florida. You think about how the state of Florida enacted these laws to restrict African-Americans' right to vote. It limited education. Whites couldn't instruct Blacks. Black teachers couldn't instruct whites. You couldn't, you know, have sex between the races, the relationships. You know, there's so many different elements to Jim Crow and how it impacted life. You know, to tie our family structure to Jim Crow is just wrong. You know, that Jim Crow had nothing to do with our family structure. And we can have a whole nother show on, you know, what's happened to the Black family through the years. And I promise you, Jim Crow was not a positive. It was a complete negative. Jim Crow was used to keep our voice out of government. We couldn't vote. Jim Crow was designed to keep us uneducated. And ultimately, this is a guy that seems to have lost his history. I'm not so sure he would have ever made it to Congress. If I'm reading this right, he's a graduate of Florida State. If Jim Crow laws were still in place, he wouldn't have been able to go to Florida State. He would have been forced over to Florida and A&M at best. I don't think we would have accepted him over there, but that's a whole nother story. And so, you know, I just, you know, for us, I hope we see it. I think, you know, for those that take his audience in, he's, you know, people clap for him and, you know, he sits up and takes his doggy treat.
Yeah. So, Rafe, here is Byron Donalds talking about Jim Crow era being some, you know, wonderful time for Black families, and that it was the politics of, you know, the Democratic presidents that ruined the Black family because of governmental assistance, housing, and food, you know, basic necessities, right? That people needed. That was somehow the end of the Black family. But I'm thinking about him and Tim Scott. They both will say or do anything, and I do mean anything, to get the attention of Donald Trump. But do you think there's any remote chance that Donald Trump is picking a Black person to be his running mate, given the pervasive racism, white supremacy, you know, support that Donald Trump receives, I won't even say Republicans, but Donald Trump, he attracts the Proud Boys and white supremacists. So what are the chances, if any, of a Byron Donalds or Tim Scott being his running mate?
Well, I don't think he'd have any problem with that as long as Donalds and Tim Scott were willing to say things like this, because the whole notion of unraveling history, slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights laws were bad, Brown versus Board of Education, that was bad. Reconstruction was bad. The Confederates were actually pretty good folks who were just kind of like trying to maintain their traditions, didn't have much to do with slavery. I have this crazy feeling that none of these people auditioning are going to get the job. It just came to me the other day that he likes people auditioning and he likes to control them. And it might not be any fun for him to actually pick somebody who then could say they won somehow. He might just take all of this adoration from all these folks and just pick somebody else. But I think the real point of this is all the folks auditioning would say anything. I think that's the bottom line. And some of this is connected to an audience of white voters, especially in the South. This is not a way to win black voters, although it's advertised as that. It's really a way to make white voters in the South feel okay about the history that the country spent so long overcoming and saying it was no big deal. I mean, why does everybody try to make you feel so bad about it?
And that's a great point, Rafe. I think it's also a way to say to white voters that there are black people who feel just like you feel, who feel like black people have had it good in this country, and that whatever issues they have, it's their own fault. Because that's Tim Scott, his from the cotton fields to Congress, and that he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. And I think that is obviously playing more to white voters. It's not playing to black voters. No black voters are listening to anything Byron Donalds or Tim Scott is saying. But I'll ask you, Ed. So Rafe says none of these folks who are on the Celebrity Apprentice or Political Apprentice are going to get selected. But what do you think about the chances of a black person being elected by Donald Trump? Not elected, but selected, I should say, as his running mate.
It's a flip of the coin to me. I wouldn't discount it. It's vice president, and for Donald Trump as a president, the vice president is about as meaningless a position as you can imagine. You're not going to have any say in the administration. This is the Donald Trump show if he were to win. The thought that it would justify or that the vice presidential candidate would justify a lot of the rollbacks that you mentioned to Stephen Miller earlier, and a lot of the policies that he might suggest, presuming that he's back in the Trump administration. We have a problem, because we've got someone sitting in the White House that would endorse a lot of the foolishness that would come from a Stephen Miller, from a Marjorie Taylor Greene, all the sorts of things that would make life truly difficult being African American, specifically, a Tim Scott and a Byron Donalds would endorse. And from the pulpit of the vice presidency, they're really dangerous. I honestly can see Donald Trump placing him on the ticket for just that reason.
Wow, guys, I'm gonna have to disagree with you, vehemently disagree with you. I think Donald Trump's MAGA base would just implode. We know a big part of why they hate Joe Biden so much is because they hate Kamala Harris, and the thought of there being a black woman in the White House scares them like crazy. So the thought that Donald Trump, who's 78 years old, eats too many McDonald's, is overweight, has all kinds of health problems, not to mention his stress. I mean, we discount the stress that he is under, both financially and now with the threat of jail time from this conviction. So, he's a walking time bomb in a lot of ways. So the thought that Byron Donalds and Tim Scott would be that close to being the next black president, if they were on the ticket, I think would just scare the dickens out of the MAGA voters. So I don't think Byron Donalds, Tim Scott, either of them, and probably anyone of color has a chance with Trump, because his base does not want to in any way support or do anything that would suggest that they acknowledge the diversity of this country and the importance of diversity in this country. And I just don't see it happening now. I could be wrong. Stranger things have happened, and this is all a game in some ways to Donald Trump. So at the end of the day, he's an opportunist. So anybody that he thinks is going to help him win might show up on that ticket. But we know at the same time, he doesn't make rational decisions. So he's not like your normal politician who's looking at how do I win, because a big part of his calculus is cheating. So if you're going to cheat at the end of the day, winning the old-fashioned way doesn't much matter. And speaking of cheating, we're going to talk when we come forward about this Georgia appellate court basically saying Donald Trump will not be tried and those other defendants in the state of Georgia until well after the November election. Gives me concerns about what courts may do if it is a close election or if Donald Trump outright loses. Are we going to see the court system try to step in the way we're seeing them in Georgia with Eileen Cannon in the handling of documents cases, classified documents? Can our court system be the buffer or be the savior that Donald Trump might need in a close election? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Medicare Fraud Prevention Week focuses on the actions everyone can take to prevent Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. Learn how to protect yourself and your loved ones by joining the Senior Medicare Patrol, or SMP, for Medicare Fraud Prevention Week, June 3rd through the 9th. Learn more at snpresource.org or by calling 1-877-808-2460.
Have you been a victim of discrimination at a private business, by a landlord while seeking housing, by an employer, or by an academic institution? If so, the LA Civil Rights Department may be able to help. Please contact us at CRE@lacity.org or call 213-978-1845. Again, 213-978-1845 or visit laisforeveryone.com.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelenos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung.
Rafe and Ed, I've been telling my New York friends that I absolutely positively have a newfound respect for New Yorkers because it is the New Yorkers, both the New York juries as well as the New York judges that have been holding our democracy in many ways. It's a New York jury that found Donald Trump, liable for a sexual assault and defamation as it relates to E. Jean Carroll. It is a New York jury that just found Trump guilty on these 34 counts involving falsifying business records. It's Letitia James. They got the $454 million civil judgment against Trump. But once you get outside of New York and you head to the South, things are looking very different. You have Eileen Cannon, who has basically just scrapped her calendar as it relates to the trial of Donald Trump involving the mishandling of classified documents. And then today, the Georgia Appellate Court said, wait a minute, there's not going to be any activity on the RICO case involving Donald Trump and co-defendants until after there's a hearing in October on Fani Willis's ability to stay on the case. And the Supreme Court has been literally taking its time in issuing a decision on whether he can be prosecuted at all, holding up the other New York case involving election interference. So all of this, Rafe, makes me wonder if this is a close election in November, or if Donald Trump loses like he did in 2020 and files that barrage of lawsuits that we know he will our courts hold? Will our democracy hold?
Well, that's a really scary question. I don't know the answer to that. I think he has a lot of friends in the court system at pretty high levels and in different places. I think Democrats are thinking about that now, finally, instead of just waiting to react at some point down the road. I think as to his cases themselves, obviously the Georgia case is going to be dead till 2025. I think the Florida case most likely as well. What worries me about that one is I think there's a lot of information about his handling of classified material that we kind of need to know. That may be the most important of all the cases in a lot of ways. And if there's any indication of why he took those classified documents and what he did with them, I sure think that would be worth knowing before the election.
Well, it doesn't look like this judge is going to do anything before the election, and she's coming up with every excuse under the sun. She's you're talking about these complicated motions and all of these legal issues. And we know she is a Trump appointee. We know she has in the past made rulings favorable to him. She appears to be trying to be less obvious with her favoritism towards him. But even the Supreme Court, Ed, we could have gotten a decision within a week. There could have been an expedited decision on this question of whether Trump is immune from any prosecution, but yet we haven't seen anything. And the term for the Supreme Court closes at the end of June, and we are now in June. So do you have any concerns that he may find favor, he being Trump, if this election doesn't go his way, or if it's a tight election?
Yeah, and truth be told, I expect him to gain the favor that you allude to. I think in your opening, you gave kudos to the New York juries that sided with him. We should also acknowledge just the bravery of the African American prosecutors that brought these cases.
Absolutely.
Whether you're talking about Alvin Bragg, whether you're talking about Letitia James or Fani Willis, it seems to take an African American prosecutor to bring a charge against Donald Trump. I think there is where I see a lot of the failing of our justice system, because I look at the U.S. Attorney General and Merrick Garland and, quite literally have to ask, what have you been doing for 4 years? This man apparently used federal resources to try to subvert the overturning of the election. The question on that Rafe, that you just raised around the sharing of top secret documents, I think the implication is that he was really loose with those documents, particularly with Russian operatives. And if that is the case, if that's what that has motivated those prosecution cases, and we're now at this point where we're 3.5 years in, and relatively nothing out of the U.S. Justice Department, you really have to look at Merrick Garland and say that he's failed the American people.
Yeah, and he now is fighting back about, the Justice Department being weaponized. But yes, no doubt about it. He seemingly was very intimidated, so worried about trying to appear balanced. And you can't appear balanced with irrational people. There is no balancing. There is no way to cause them to believe that, the Justice Department was acting independently or objectively, no matter what he did. Let's prosecute the president's son for the most, the weakest charge ever, and Republicans still are making attacks against him. Here's what I worry about too, Rafe. I'm thinking back to Al Gore. Democrats don't seem, Donald Trump will tear the democracy down. He'll burn it all down to gain a win. And now he even has more at stake than before. And what's at stake now is to try to stay out of jail. It's not just about his pride or his ego. It's literally about his freedom. But Dems, we don't tend to do that. We're not the burn it down party. So if it is a tight race, if it goes to the Supreme Court, I could see Biden on behalf of the country taking one on the chin or saying, he'll bow out. What do you make of that? I hope we are ready for the kind of tough fight that we may have, and we're not going to just kowtow or capitulate to Trump and company on the basis of trying to save the country.
Yeah, I wonder about that, although I do think there's a greater readiness now to think about Election Day and beyond than there ever was before. Bush versus Gore was a first that came out of nowhere. It was a total, nobody knew what to do. It was kind of, something not even considered. So I think there's a greater awareness. I'm not sure there's answers yet, but, there's still some time to think that through. But I sort of don't think it would be quite as sort of nobility, don't worry about it, everything's fine, sort of thing. What the alternatives are, though, I don't know.
Yeah, it's scary. We saw Trump. I mean, he lost 60 plus lawsuits before, but we have a very different judiciary. We have a judiciary that is willing to do his bidding in a lot of ways. So be interesting to see what some of those justices, because we know if there is a challenge, it's likely to end up back at the Supreme Court, what some of them might do. Real quickly, Ed, a new poll out, the headline suggests that there's some great movement on behalf of Joe Biden, but when you read it, folks say, well, we might not vote for Donald Trump because he is now a convicted felon. Before he was convicted, there were more people seemingly saying they definitely would not. Are you surprised at the fact that there hasn't been some big uptick for Biden after the conviction?
Yeah, no, not at all. Listen, I think we largely understand who Donald Trump is. We largely understand who Joe Biden is. They've been the two candidates that the country's had to sort of choose from for quite some time. I don't think you're going to see a great deal of like, oh, shock, I'm not voting for Donald Trump, particularly over those charges. I think there are some more serious charges that if he were convicted of that could have moved the needle. But I think the Trump team has done a really good job of characterizing this as rather minor, that it was a stretch to even make these felonies. But in the conviction, ultimately, the Biden campaign has got to figure out a way to explain this to the American people, and that'll come in the campaign, literature and campaign commercials over the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, we don't know, as I'm sure you're going to say, Ray, what kind of constitutional crisis we would be in because of someone who may win the presidency, who literally is not only convicted, but he may face jail time. We have a judge in New York, again, I'm loving these New Yorkers, who's not likely to suffer Donald Trump and who may literally on July 11th, the day of his sentencing, give him some jail time, because Trump's not going to walk in there remorseful. He's not going to go into that courtroom and try to mitigate or show mitigation in a way that your typical defendant would do. And it may leave the judge with no choice but to give him jail time. Else, otherwise there's going to be the mockery of this whole process. Any predictions on what that judge might do and what that would mean for the election?
Not a clue, but I will tell you this. That I think at the end of the day, when we look back on this year, the issue that's going to matter more than all these trials is reproductive rights. That's an issue that moves voters from one place to another or from not voting to voting. And so far this year, with all the craziness going on, I have not seen anything that matches the intensity of that issue this year.
And we do see Republicans scrambling, all now trying to backtrack on statements they've made about abortion, actually going out lying about their records while they continue to vote on bills that would restrict access to contraceptions and access to reproductive health. And the voters are smart. They see through it. And as you said, that has been one issue that has motivated voters consistently to vote against Republicans. And let's hope that issue has staying power all the way through November. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Rafe. We are out of time. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. Always a lot smarter as a result. When we come forward, we're going to be talking about Pride Month. Pride Month got started on June 1st. Going to talk to a couple that says because of discrimination they face and other obstacles that individuals who are queer face, Pride Month takes on significance in bigger ways. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.